The town of Cayce, located in South Carolina, was an ideal place for a small family to live. It was a quiet, peaceful corner where everything was in its place. Avenues with straight rows of houses surrounded by green lawns and cozy courtyards where children played football and adults walked in parks with dogs. In this city, almost everyone knew each other, and every new day began with greetings between neighbors, exchanging recipes or discussing the weather. To the outside world, Cayce was the image of a small ideal where events unfolded at their own pace, without disturbing residents about external threats. Here, in one of these houses, mother Selena Collins lived with her daughter Faye. Selena was a woman for whom every day with her daughter was valuable. Faye was born on June 5, 2013, and became her best friend and support from an early age. Her mother said that Faye was an extraordinarily bright girl. She was constantly smiling. Her laugh was infectious, and her eyes were always sparkling with curiosity. The girl was extremely active and cheerful, always found time for games, for questions, and for new experiences. Selena raised her little princess by herself because she was not married, and at that time had no permanent partners. It was their little kingdom with Faye. Their home was a full bowl, cozy, filled with joy. The days passed quietly, and time seemed to be in no hurry. Mother and daughter often spent time outside playing in the garden. For Faye, the courtyard of their house was a real world where she could be herself. Running on the grass, looking for interesting objects, listening to birds singing and dreaming. One of her favorite pastimes was walking with her mom. Selena remembered how Faye was looking forward to playing in the yard, and even when Faye was tired, she never refused to walk around the house. Every morning started the same way. Selena cooked breakfast for the family. Faye rode the school bus at 7:30 a.m., and at the end of the day, when the same bus brought her back, her mother always met her at the door. It was their ritual, and it was inviolable. Mother and daughter had lunch together, and after school, Faye usually spent time playing outdoors. Everything was as it should be for a child when his life is full of happiness and carefree. On February 10th, 2020, as always, Faye returned home from lessons, greeted her mother, ate, and as soon as she finished, ran into the yard. The mother, without worrying, took care of household chores and only occasionally looked out the window to check on her daughter. At that time, the girl was wearing a black t-shirt with a bright neon pattern, a skirt with a floral print, and her favorite polka dot boots. It was cold outside, but that didn't stop Faye from having fun, running around the yard. However, after a while, at about 3:45 p.m., Selena was surprised to notice that her daughter had not returned to the house. At first, she did not attach any importance to this, deciding that the girl was just playing with the neighborhood children or had run into friends. But as time passed, Faye was still nowhere to be seen. The excitement began to grow. Selena started looking for her daughter all over the yard and the neighboring streets. The mother turned to friends and neighbors who, like her, began to worry. After about 45 minutes of worrying, Selena realized that the situation was getting out of control. In a panic, she calls her then boyfriend, Carter Arcand, saying that she can't find Faye. On the way home from work, Carter advises her to start searching immediately. At 5 p.m., barely holding back tears, Selena called 911. There was desperate anxiety in her voice, as if the whole world around her had collapsed on her. The woman was sobbing, unable to explain exactly what had happened. "I can't find my daughter," she said, barely able to stand on her feet. "She was right in front of my porch." The mother told the dispatcher that Faye had not returned home and that she could not figure out where she could be. Shortly after receiving the message, 3 patrol cars filled with police officers arrived at Selena Collins' address in Cayce Township. Equipped and ready to search, they began to explore the area. Already on the spot, they were informed that 6-year-old Faye, as indicated in the mother's report, went outside and did not return. These words were to be the beginning of a large-scale operation that covered the entire city and lasted for several days. The police knew that time plays a crucial role in such cases, and every minute counts. Therefore, the survey was conducted not only on the ground, but also in the air, with the involvement of local residents, volunteers, and sniffer dogs. law enforcement officers searched for traces of Faye within a radius of several kilometers from her home. At 6 p.m., Cayce DPS Director Byron Snellgrove turns to the FBI for help, and soon agents from the Columbia Field Office join the search. Investigators immediately begin interviewing neighbors. Around the same time, Chad Swetlik, Faye's father, reports her missing. He lives in Rowan County, North Carolina, where FBI agents are quickly starting a check. Swetlik's house is searched, but no evidence is found. Phone records confirm that he was at home at the time of his daughter's disappearance. By 6:30 p.m., Faye's house was declared a crime scene. Officers are carefully photographing and searching him for clues, but so far to no avail. Next, they conducted a detailed survey of Selena's yard. Surveillance cameras were installed on it, from which the police extracted the recordings. It soon became clear that the girl had indeed left the house after returning on the school bus. The video showed her entering the house and then going outside. However, no strangers or suspicious cars that could be connected with the disappearance were noticed. At this time, Faye's mother, Collins, and her boyfriend, Carter Arcand, are separately testifying to investigators and FBI agents. As soon as the first search teams took to the streets, the police began an active dialogue with local residents to find out if they had seen anything unusual. One of the neighbors reported that he saw Faye playing near the townhouses and ran towards the common fence, separating the residential area and the Napa Auto Parts store. It happened approximately between 3:30 and 4 p.m. After that, no one saw her anymore. Local residents who heard about the incident themselves began to look for the girl in the vicinity. Neighbors, as well as other parents who were at home, also tried to find Faye in their yards. However, all this did not bring results. It was obvious that the scale of the search could not do without the involvement of professional forces. Over the next few hours after the 911 call, more than 50 officers from various law enforcement agencies were involved in the search. New search groups were formed, which went to other areas of the city. The police distributed their efforts, directing everyone to key areas where it was possible to find traces of Faye. However, a few hours later, when it got dark and it became increasingly difficult to navigate, searches in the surrounding forests and parks still continued, but all in vain. On Tuesday, February 11th at midnight, Collins, Arcand, and Collins' mother provide voluntary written statements and hand over their phones for forensic examination. Such a procedure is necessary to exclude certain persons from the list of suspects. No evidence was found. Since the Collins house was recognized as a crime scene, they were temporarily moved to a hotel. Early in the morning of the same day, the authorities set up a command post and open a hotline, information about which is actively disseminated to the public. Officers begin patrolling the Churchill Heights area, stopping cars to interview drivers. Investigators are also requesting and analyzing recordings from surveillance cameras installed in homes and businesses. All dumpsters in the area are being thoroughly searched, but no leads have been found. At the same time, Collins and Arcand are called for a repeat interview. Law enforcement officials say that they do not yet have enough grounds to exclude the couple from the list of suspects. As a rule, close people always become the first suspects. During the conversation, Collins makes a strange statement, claiming that her maternal intuition can help point to Faye's location, which naturally raised more questions from the police. Therefore, for the time being, this couple is being left under suspicion. The next morning, February 12th, Collins, along with 2 FBI agents, retravels to the Schicksmile Creek area, which is less than a mile from the place where events will later unfold. A search of the area again yields no new evidence, although it is important to note that this area had already been checked 2 days ago, and then the investigators also found nothing. At 11:15 a.m., investigators are questioning a man living in an apartment at 602 Piccadilly Square. Piccadilly Square is the name of the area that was part of the investigation due to its geographical proximity. as it was located near the place of Faye Swetlik's disappearance. The man interviewed reported that his neighbor is Cody Taylor. The neighbor explained that he was working on February 10th at the time of Faye's disappearance. Checking the records confirmed his alibi. However, it turned out that Taylor was not at work that day. During a search of an apartment in Piccadilly Square, investigators found a laundry bag that a neighbor identified as belonging to Taylor. Investigators noted that the bag looked full, took a DNA sample from the outside, but did not examine the contents of the bag. In the evening of the same day, investigators returned to Piccadilly Square for a more detailed interrogation of Taylor and his neighbor. When asked what he was doing on February 10th, Taylor replied that he was sleeping at home at the time of the girl's disappearance. The police decided to research the apartment, but no evidence related to Faye's disappearance was found again.
What I will confirm is this. It was a critical piece of evidence that would have been listed on her missing persons flyer.
On February 13th, 2020, 3 days after the disappearance of 6-year-old Faye Swetlik, the first breakthroughs in the investigation began. At 600 Piccadilly Circus, investigators found a cart, the contents of which attracted their attention. Inside was a raincoat and a small bucket with traces of freshly dug earth. The shoe also found in the cart matched the description of the shoes Faye was wearing on the day she disappeared. Now Piccadilly Square was already a place that was automatically associated with the disappearance of a child. They were the same polka-dot rubber boots she had worn the day she returned home from school and soon disappeared. This discovery was a wake-up call for law enforcement agencies. The discovery indicated that someone was trying to hide the traces associated with the disappearance of the girl. The police began to realize that they were dealing with a kidnapping. Law enforcement agencies immediately began an extended site check. The search for additional traces continued for several hours. Additional forces were gathered, and once again searched the wooded area behind the auto parts store, which became one of the key sites for reinspection.
6-year-old's body was found yesterday, 3 days after she went missing.
3 days of searching, during which police and volunteers managed to go around the entire area, led to a tragic find. Eventually, in the forest itself, a few hundred meters from the place where the boots were found, the police found Faye's body. It was a terrible discovery, which confirmed that the disappearance of the girl was not an accident. The body was found in an area that had been thoroughly checked a few days ago. The police determined that the girl was killed and then moved to this forest where she was found. It is noteworthy that the place where the corpse was found was not the place of the murder, and the body was moved there clearly later, which indicated that the perpetrator was trying to hide his tracks. When the girl's body was found, the first conclusions of the police became clearer. Now it could be argued that the girl was the victim of a crime. An autopsy showed that she was killed in the first hours after her disappearance, and the body was brought to the discovery site late at night, when it was already dark. This meant that the killer was trying to hide his actions in order to cover his tracks and avoid detection. The police once again examined the dumpster around which the boots were found to try to find additional evidence that could lead to the attacker.
Just moments after locating Faye Marie Swetlik, we located a deceased male.
While the police were conducting additional searches, trying to link the evidence and find out who could have been involved in her disappearance, an unexpected message was received on the operational channel. Closer to noon on February 13th, 2020, the hospital received a call about a man with a serious wound to the neck. The address of the call is 602 Piccadilly Square, the same house next to which the dumpster with the girl's boots was found. This coincidence caused an immediate reaction from the police, as everything pointed to a possible connection between these events. The call to the emergency service came from the man's neighbor. The caller discreetly but quickly reported the incident. "Found the neighbor on the floor, he's bleeding out. Please send help as soon as possible," he said, trying not to panic. Paramedics immediately responded to the call, and a group of police officers who were already working in the area also went to the scene. By the time the emergency services arrived, it became clear that the situation was critical. The man was lying on the floor in his apartment with a deep stab wound in the neck area. Paramedics tried to give him first aid, but despite all efforts, his life could not be saved. The man, later identified as 30-year-old Cody Scott Taylor, died at the scene. The police officers who were on the spot immediately noted that the address coincides with the place where the missing girl's boots were found earlier. The coincidence turned out to be too significant to ignore. Law enforcement officers began to examine Taylor's apartment and the surrounding area to find out if he had anything to do with Faye's disappearance. After receiving a search warrant, they began to explore Taylor's apartment. They were looking for any evidence that could confirm his involvement. At first glance, the room did not arouse suspicion. Everything looked neat. Nothing hinted at a possible crime. However, a careful examination showed that this impression was deceptive. Footprints were found in one of the rooms belonging to Taylor, which indicated that this was where the murder could have taken place. The police found bloodstains, which, apparently, they tried to wash off. Additional analysis showed that the blood belonged to Faye Swetlik. Several items were also found that later became key evidence in the case, including a blanket and cables that could have been used by the perpetrator. While detectives were examining the apartment, information about Taylor began to gradually take shape. He had no criminal history, but neighbors described him as an introverted and uncommunicative person. He rented an apartment with another man who was unrelated to the case and, according to police, did not even know what was going on in the apartment. Taylor worked for one of the local companies, but did not maintain close relationships with either colleagues or others. Law enforcement agencies have studied the recordings from Walmart surveillance cameras. The video showed Taylor buying gardening supplies, including a bag of soil, a few days before Faye's body was found. The same bag of partially used earth was later found at his home. Moreover, the police received a video where Taylor throws out the contents of a large bag in the place where Faye Swetlik's body was later found. On February 13th, investigators tracked down the Lyft driver who was giving Taylor a ride after shopping at Walmart. According to the driver, Taylor was acting very nervous, and when the driver started talking about the missing girl, Taylor abruptly stated that he had never met Faye. Taylor's roommate told police that on the day Faye disappeared, Taylor sprayed an odor eliminator in the house, which he usually did not use. At first glance, this did not arouse suspicion, as they often smoked weed and sometimes used spray to deodorize the room. However, the neighbor also mentioned that a strange smell appeared in the house that day. At first, he thought it might have been a low-quality aerosol, but looking back, he realized that Taylor was probably trying to hide the smell, hinting at Faye's body. The discovery of the girl's body in the woods and subsequent finds in Taylor's apartment tied the events together. It became clear that Taylor could have been involved in the kidnapping and murder of Faye. Apparently, Taylor strangled the girl in his apartment and then moved her body into the woods to hide the traces of the crime. However, realizing the inevitability of exposure, he decided to commit suicide, leaving behind many questions that could not be answered. It was still unknown exactly why Taylor committed this crime. His behavior, lack of a criminal record, and sudden decision to commit suicide left more questions than answers. However, the discovery in the dumpster associated with his address, as well as evidence in the apartment, clearly indicated his involvement. After a thorough investigation and analysis of all the evidence found, the police came to the obvious conclusion: Cody Scott Taylor was the main suspect in the disappearance and murder of Faye. Traces of the girl's blood were found in his apartment, which directly indicated her presence at the crime scene. Moreover, forensic experts confirmed that the girl's death occurred in the first hours after her disappearance, and the body was hidden and moved to the forest later. This finding prompted the investigation to conclude that the perpetrator and the crime scene were most likely in the immediate vicinity of Faye's house. The key clues were traces of blood found in Cody Taylor's apartment, as well as his behavior, the lack of a confirmed alibi, his suicide immediately after the discovery of Faye's body, and information about his past, which did not provide any explanation for his terrible act. there was no clear evidence that Taylor was acting under anyone's influence. The neighbor, who lived in the same apartment with him, continued to claim that he did not know about the crime and had no idea what was happening in the next room. However, at this stage of the investigation, questions began to arise about Taylor's neighborhood. The police, investigating his lifestyle and behavior, encountered a curious contradiction. Taylor's neighbor, who was the first to find him bleeding and called for emergency help, remained completely calm and unperturbed. He claimed that he knew nothing about what was going on in the apartment, and that, for him, the very fact of finding Faye's body in the woods was shocking. But there were a lot of questions here. How could he not notice Taylor's strange behavior? Someone began to wonder if the neighbor was so ignorant, or if he himself was somehow connected with this crime, hiding information and helping Taylor escape. Such speculation, of course, could not be confirmed by facts, but among local residents, and even some law enforcement officials, questions about Taylor's neighbor did not disappear. Many believed that Taylor could not have committed such a complex crime alone. However, this remained just speculation. After the tragic death of 6-year-old Faye Swetlik, society, especially the local community of Cayce, South Carolina, was experiencing shock and profound loss. But most importantly, the tragedy has stirred up not only this small town, but also society as a whole, forcing many to think about the safety of children and the protection of their rights.
A lot of broken hearts at a memorial that is growing very quickly here tonight. People, most of them strangers, are coming with things like flowers and balloons, stuffed animals.
In memory of the girl, her family and the city authorities organized several events. A plaque was erected in memory of Faye at the school she attended, and a small statue depicting a girl with her trademark smile and bright boots was erected on the initiative of local residents. The statue was erected at the place where she once played, and became a symbol of a lost childhood and a tragedy that left an unhealed wound in the heart of the entire community. Another important step was the creation of the Faye Foundation, which raised funds to help families who had survived tragic events. The foundation has also supported various initiatives related to child safety and awareness raising for the protection of children's rights. Her parents, Selena and Jeff, actively participated in such events, where they told their story and tried to convey to society how important it is to take care of the safety of their children. Faye's tragedy has become the motivation for many improvements in child safety and crime control. The issues raised by this story did not disappear with its completion, but continued to be heard in public debates and at legislative levels. People became more attentive to their children, more actively monitored their surroundings, and drew attention to the need for faster and clearer actions when a child disappeared. But for Faye's mother, Selena, and her family, the pain of loss has not gone away. Every new public event related to Faye's memory became for her another reminder that the loss of her daughter is a wound that never heals. Her small face, imprinted on commemorative plaques and in the hearts of local residents, remained a bright reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of protecting every child. The name of Faye Swetlik will remain in the hearts of thousands of people